Welcome back. I'm Melissa Harris Perry. Have you heard the one about the two senators? You know, the one where one is African-American, a Democrat with a perfect liberal rating, and most recently mayor of a large city in New Jersey. And the other one is Tea Party from Kentucky, planning to run for the presidential nomination in 2016. Have you heard it? No, it's not a joke. There's no punchline. I sincerely want to know if you've heard about the proposal from D.C.'s newest odd couple, Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey and Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. These two were making the D.C. rounds together in a rare show of bipartisan cooperation about an issue of actual policy significance and meaningful social, economic, and political impact. Which isn't to say that the two of them aren't having any fun. Here they are at a Politico Playbook Cocktails event on Wednesday, seeming to have more fun than a libertarian in international waters.
Do they offer you cocktails?
I see cocktails, but I didn't, you know.
We won't tell what's in it. Just pass it on down.
There. Cheers.
Behind the surprising optics of this unlikely political duo is a new proposal for addressing the incarceration crisis in America. On Tuesday, Senators Booker and Paul introduced the REDEEM Act, which stands for the record expungement designed to enhance employment and focuses on reforming the criminal justice system. Here's what the REDEEM Act proposes. It would incentivize states to increase the age of criminal responsibility to 18 years old, which would prevent sending kids into the adult criminal justice system. It also allows for sealing and expungement of juvenile records. This would either clear or seal the records of those under 15 who commit nonviolent crimes, giving those young people a second chance to make good. It would restrict the use of juvenile solitary confinement except in the most extreme circumstances. And it would offer adults a way to seal nonviolent criminal records, which could help job applicants who otherwise would not be able to pass a background check. It would also lift the ban on SNAP and TANF benefits for low-level drug offenders and give access to these crucial federal poverty benefits for people who have served their time. Booker, the Democrat with a core urban constituency disproportionately affected by mass incarceration. Paul, the libertarian ideologue who has long stood in opposition to the war on drugs and what he calls the injustice of mandatory minimum sentences. Together, they're offering a provocative agenda for addressing the realities of America's mass incarceration in an effort that could yield tangible benefits for thousands of former inmates who have paid their debt to society but are still shut out of a second chance, like the nearly 75% of ex-offenders who remain jobless up to a year after their release. As Senator Paul puts it, the biggest impediment to civil rights and employment in our country is a criminal record. Our current system is broken and has trapped tens of thousands of young men and women in a cycle of poverty and incarceration. Many of these young people could escape this trap if criminal justice were reformed, if records were expunged after time served, and if nonviolent crimes did not become a permanent blot preventing employment. Joining me at the table, Benji Sarlin, who is a political reporter for MSNBC.com. Seema Iyer, who is a criminal defense and civil rights attorney and former prosecutor. Piper Kerman, who is author of Orange is the New Black, which is now a hit Netflix series and focuses on the lives of women in prison. And Glenn Martin, president and founder of Just Leadership USA, which aims to cut the U.S. prison population in half by 2030. Thank you all for being here. So, Glenn.
Hi.
I mean, this is the kind of proposals you and others in the activism community have been making forever. Is it exciting to see this duo taking this on?
It's definitely a huge step in the right direction, considering 65 million Americans have a criminal record on file, and the fact that punishment doesn't end when people exit our prison system. The idea that this not only takes a look at how do we stop so many people from going in, but also how do we respond to the fact that even after people exit prison, when they're trying to get their lives together and get a job, that they face these collateral consequences or lifetime punishment, I think makes this a very comprehensive proposal. So I think it's definitely the first step in the right direction.
I do have to say, part of what I was stunned by in this, Piper, is that it both addresses the question of the actual experience of incarceration. So, for example, with juveniles in solitary confinement, and the back-end issues of recidivism and reentry. I mean, it is relatively rare in Washington these days to see a meaningful policy proposal like this. Do you have any optimism, given the work that you've been doing, that there is space for this to actually move in to reforming our criminal justice system?
I think what's smart about the proposal is its focus on kids in the system, because for two reasons. There's no question that kids in the system, young people who get caught up in the juvenile justice system or the adult criminal justice system, are a leverage point. It's easy for everyone to see that if you make a difference in the life of a young person, get them on the right path, makes a huge difference, not just for that individual, but for the entire community. It pays dividends to the entire community. Also, politically, there has been more empathy extended towards kids, as there should be. Yep. There's a variety of reasons why we treat children differently when they commit crimes or otherwise.
Right, but it is a point that it's good politics, right? So so that if you're trying to get that wedge to get in, you don't begin with adult recidivists. You begin with young people, right, who are nonviolent drug offenders.
And we've seen this in a lot of debates. I mean, a lot of the early entree into immigration reform, for example, was talking about dreamers, because who could disagree with these kids who haven't done anything wrong? It's it's always a good way to get into it. But in this case, Rand Paul is one of several Republicans who are trying to come up with a more empathetic face for the party. And this is one area where the fact that crime has plummeted to such historic lows, there's a little more breathing room for Republicans to step back from where they used to be.
I want to come back to you on that after we take a break, because I do still find this fascinating, because it's not just like compassionate conservatives, like it's meaningful, right? And, I'm not one who's going to give Rand Paul a lot of credit, but I appreciate this moment. So when we come back.
I just got to the Senate in October, and people like Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Leahy, Senator Durbin, a lot of folks were already starting to stay in a growing bipartisan chorus. Enough is enough. We could be saving money, empowering people to succeed, and ending something that really betrays American values, fiscal prudency and liberty.
That was Senator Cory Booker at the Politico event this past Wednesday, talking about the need for prison reform, and also very carefully noting how he just got to the Senate but is already working in a bipartisan fashion. Bipartisanship might also be a good resume builder for Senator Paul as he seeks to distinguish himself from what will be a crowded field of 2016 Republican hopefuls. And Benji, it's on that I want to come to you. Since when did common sense criminal justice reform and legalization of controlled substances become a way of winning the Republican nomination?
Well,
it's kind of exciting.
This is where Paul gets interesting. His libertarian movement has really been picking up steam within the party. This was all a standard position of his father, Ron Paul, who often talked about how the war on drugs was a failure, how we're over-criminalized, and it's been gradually seeping its way into the Republican mainstream more and more. For example, someone like Chris Christie, who no one would confuse with a libertarian like Rand Paul, has been going around giving speeches to conservative audiences about how the drug war is a failure and we need sentencing reform, and that's what I'm going to do in New Jersey. But this is part of a broader play for Rand Paul, which is that his argument for 2016 is, look, I have different positions than these other candidates on some key issues like this. That means I could broaden the party. I can make a case that's not just, listen, black voters, did you know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican?
Right.
You just didn't realize. It's instead something like, look, this is an actual concrete thing. The NAACP is very supportive of what I'm talking about. Let's talk.
Okay, so I find that to be potentially exciting, because I actually think the political system always works better when there are two robust parties that are trying to get everybody's votes, right? So even if I may not myself be casting a vote for that party, I think it is more exciting that way. And yet I'm still nervous, in part, Seema, because of what I heard you say about, the making decisions. And I feel like that worldview is still the primary one that we have about incarceration. The people who are in jail are people who are making bad decisions and committing crimes who ought to go to jail.
No.
That's not what you said.
Several categories, Melissa. One is that category of people